Hey everybody, this is ECAbrams, and today as part of October Effects, we're going to be talking about a rarely used and perhaps never used effect called transform. I don't know why you'd ever use it, because actually you can transform the properties of any layer. But, oh but, there are some cool things you can do with it. With one adjustment layer, this effect, and a few expressions, we're going to make some awesome glitching stuff around. And I don't even know why I'm gesturing with this crudely untaped hockey stick. I guess because I'm Canadian, I'm a little bit drunk. So let's get into After Effects and transform stuff with not the properties. Oh boy! Okay, cool. So in After Effects, the first thing I want you to do is import some footage. I don't care what kind of footage, so I'm going to use the footage from the intro. Not very picky. Thank you for that alert. Super good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new adjustment layer. Now, adjustment layers, I'm not sure if you're aware, are kind of like putting filters in front of a camera. So they're going to change all of the images and all the layers that are below it. So I'll just give you a quick example. We've got the adjustment layer out, and I'm going to take out the transform. You can find it in the distort folder. And here we go, distort, transform, put it out there. Oh, nothing happens. Nothing happens because all of these things are set to normal values. So what I'm going to do is just going to drag up the scale here. Cool, that's fun. So this adjustment layer is scaling everything below it. 252% of the bottom things are all going to get scaled up. So we're going to go new, say text layer, blah, and we'll do that. Now if I put this layer below that layer, see it gets scaled up too. Everything gets scaled up. That's what it do. So just so you're aware that those are things that this thing is doing. Something else to be aware of, since we're using scaling type things, you might want to up your anti-aliasing. Maybe just a little. I don't know. I don't know what you do with yourself, but that's what I'm going to do with this. We can now use this transform to create some cool glitching effects. Since this will do the things below it, and I don't have to go mess around with keyframes or anything in here, I can apply some expressions to this, and then maybe a couple mats or something, or mates, or whatever you want to say, that are going to affect the alpha of this so it's not everywhere, and then we'll screw around with its opacity so it's not on all the time. So let's start with the transform, shall we? We're going to hold down Alt, click on Scale here, and we are going to type in random, R-A-N-D-O-M, and then in lovely curved regular brackets, we're going to type in 105, 150, meaning give us a random number between 105 and 150. So anything that is under this layer is going to be scaled between 105 and 150. So that means me and this hockey stick and everything, and any other layers that you're going to put between here and there. Or actually really anything under here. So nothing stops these. They're just always there in the stack. So that's thing number one done. And you can see as we move through time, it starts to go crazy all over the place. Fun times. The other thing I want to change is the position. So I'm going to hold down Alt, click on the stopwatch here, and I'm going to type in wiggle, and then in brackets 24, 54. Now, why am I doing 24 and 54? Well, 24 is the frame rate of the footage. Actually, it was 23 point blah blah blah, but it's not important. We're going to say 24 because no one's going to notice. Now, why 54? Well, 54 has something to do with the frame size and 105. So let's pull up the calculator here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1920, which is the long side here, and we're going to times that by 1.05, which is the smallest scaling that we're going to be doing, and I get 2016. Now minus 1920 from that gives us 96, meaning this thing at its minimal scaling could move 96 pixels, no one will notice. That's pretty good, I suppose. Now what if I go 1080, which is the height here, and we'll do the same thing, times 1.05, good, and now less 1080, its number is 54. So I can go 90 whatever in one direction, 54 in another. I'm just going to play it smart, and I'm going to go 54, which is the smaller of the two. So if it's moving 54 in either direction, then It's never going to be out of bounds, which is good. That's what you want in hockey and all things. Although there's like boards to keep you in hockey. I don't know. A lot of people don't know what hockey is or does. So I guess I'm just trying to inform you. So that's about enough out of the transform for me. I'm happy with that. But you can mess around with other things. You can mess around with the skew if you want. Whoa, it's getting crazy. Like the rotation. You can mess around with the opacity if you want. You can mess around with the shutter angle, some capacity if you really want to. Anchor point, whatever. Any of these things, do whatever you want. It's yours to play with. What I want to do with this adjustment layer is make sure first it's not always on. So I'm going to do that by first putting a slider control out on here. Now look, transform, slider control, you're learning about two effects already. Now the slider control just produces a value between 0 and whatever. It's just a placeholder really. So hit T to call up the opacity of this thing, or transparency, or whatever you think it's T shortcut for opacity. Hold down Alt and click there. And so click on the stopwatch and it's time to type some stuff in. First thing is going to be R equals random, and a random number, please, between 0, 10. It's important to say please to your computer all the time. Now, you've got an R value that you can use to put in, so we're going to type in if, and then if, and in some regular brackets, if R is greater than this slider control number, in this case 0, then we would like it to do the thing in the curly brackets, and what it will do is set the value to be 100, meaning totally on. And then we're going to type in else, and then in curly brackets, we're going to type in 0. So if R, a random number between 0 and 100, is ever greater than this number we specify, in this case 0, so if between 0 and 100 you're larger than 0, or always, please be 100 or fully opaque. If not, please be 0. So we can click out of that and see how that goes. So it's always on. What if I set this to say 10? Well, then it's always off. That's just how it is. What if I set it to something in between, like 5? Well, then sometimes it's on and sometimes it's off. So that's about it. This sets up the probability of it being on or off. Now, you can keyframe that probability and you can go from 0, all the way down to 10, or however you want that to go. So it goes from a state of always happening, and then eventually it will calm down to a state of never happening. So that's something that you can definitely do, which is great, and it gives you just that amount of fine control. And if you want it to be sometimes happening, make it a value in between there. 9.5 is pretty good for a few twitches every now and then, but that's probability for you. So that's good. We've got it happening, we've got it not happening all the time. The next thing that I want to do is have it not happening everywhere. So what I'm going to do is create a rectangle, double clicking on this up here to make this rectangle. Now let's set the stroke down to 0, I suppose. Now in the rectangle, within the rectangle path, we have commands for the size and position. So I'm going to hold down Alt, click on the size here. I'm going to go X equals, and I'm going to say X, you should always be 2000. That's a good number for you, semicolon. And then Y, I would like you to equal a random number somewhere between 250 and 540. That's a good number for you too. And then within square brackets, I would like it to be X, Y. And that should be perfectly good. So let me just make sure I have a semicolon at the end of this here. Boom, good. So now this is always changing in size. Now I'm going to copy that expression, hold down Alt, click on position here, paste it there, and what I would like is for the X to equal 0, not 2000, because I don't want it to go anywhere. And then the Y will be a random number, somewhere between negative 540 and 540, meaning that on the X-axis, go nowhere, but on the Y-axis, please be anywhere between here and here. So what does that mean? Well, it means it's kind of all over the place. Feel free to make as many of these rectangle paths as you desire and alter their thickness and randomness and whatever to whatever pleases you. But what we'll be doing now is we will be just assigning a track mat, alpha mat of this, so that this only shows up in the areas that this shape is. So there we go, nice and glitchy all over the place. And that's the basic parts of the effect. Now, remember how I said anything under that adjustment layer is going to get adjusted? We'll make a new adjustment layer, and let's adjust some adjustments, shall we? And on that layer, we do things like a color correction tint, and then we use like a curves, we can do that. And we can use like a noise, maybe noise HLS. And let me just mess around with this curve here, like so, tint like so. Maybe this could be a little bit more extreme, like this. That's looking pretty extreme. You know, then we mess around with things like the redness curve. That's great. You know, whatever we feel like doing. Just, you do yours and I'll do mine, okay? How does that sound? La la la, 2 across the board here. So then when you zoom in, you get to see more of that wacky detail. Now we can apply more of the same to this adjustment layer to make things a little bit weirder. So maybe something like that. So this is a lot grainier. We could put a fast blur out on this perhaps. You know, maybe blur it out to like a 5% or a 3% or something. That could be neat. What else can we do? We could put on further more tinting if we want. You know, tint it out. It's 10% more. You know, do whatever. It's your thing to do with as you please. Now, something else you might want to do is maybe blur the edges on this. We're just going to pre-compose this. Oh, where's that at? Pre-compose. Okay, good. And then we fast blur this. Haha, take that. So anyway, 10 fast blur, boom. So that's just a little bit blurry around the edges, and that looks super neat. Awesome, good times. So to recap, we've used the transform to mess around with things under this layer. Now you can certainly transform this layer alone by itself, but what we really wanted to do was to get something that's messing with the layer below it, and then we can mess with that layer. So that's the methodology here. Now we could create a new adjustment layer and then put the transform out on that and just use it as a utility to maybe scale or shrink things a little bit, you know, whatever we need to do. But the reason we would do that is if a producer comes back to you and says, can you make this, you know, bigger? Can you zoom in on this? Can you move it like this? And you have a big complicated project of stuff and things are parented to things and it's just really confusing and you don't want to be bothered with this kind of nonsense. So you just put a distort, transform, blow it up a little, move it a little, whatever you got to do. So this can be a time saver as well as a straight up glitch maker. But I like the glitches. I think it's a good way of doing it. Feel free to use things like magnify or whatever else is in the distort bin here for the same reason. I mean, you don't have to use the transform in this way. You can use all sorts of distorting things. You can just swap out whatever you want. But hopefully this is giving you some ideas of some stuff you can do for yourself. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm Evan Abrams. If you enjoy learning about After Effects and motion graphics and VFX, then subscribe to this channel. It's a new tutorial every week, and if I do say so myself, they're pretty good. This one was pretty great, right? And all this month in October, we're talking about effects that you probably don't use and have never heard of, so that could be cool. And stop by evanabrams.com if you want to download cool stuff to use in After Effects. And you know what? If this tutorial is difficult, then I would recommend you ask me some questions in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I'm able. And if you have questions about just life in general, hit me up at ECAbrams. Try to keep it After Effects related. My life advice is pretty horrible because, as you can see, my whiteboard is held on by duct tape and I wear flannel shirts. So life didn't work out the way I wanted it to either. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you like what you see, and I will see you around the internet.